Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, The Answer Company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. Alan Miller with you for a change. I don't do that many these days, and I want to say that it's a real honor for me to be here today because I just wrote an article on patriotism, and I'm sitting with a real patriot, Congresswoman Angie Craig of the 2nd District. And I say that you are a patriot. I mean it because when Congress was afraid to make the move, you were one of the first to request that President Biden, who has a wonderful record, step aside so that the Democrats could really attack this regime, not this regime, but this election. And for that, we owe you a great debt of thanks.
Well, Alan, first of all, let me say thank you. Thank you for being here to do this interview today. As you all know, I've been here many times over the years, and I just appreciate your service to our community as well. Thank you for the kind remarks. Certainly it was a painful moment when I had to decide to ask our president to step aside and not run for re-election. The truth is I didn't think he could campaign and win. And I think that this election is too important. And the theory of the case, my theory of the case, was that there was a brighter day ahead. I didn't know what it looked like for the Democratic Party, but what I knew is we had such enormous talent in the party. And so I am just so grateful to the president for being the statesman and the human that I know he is. And for Democrats out there, I tell you what, the better days are here, and it's building. I still think we're in the early days of the momentum that the Harris-Walz, and can you believe we're saying Walz, the Harris-Walz ticket is going to bring
well, let's
to our
talk
nation.
about that for a moment, because we know Kamala Harris, and we know her strength, and we know her vivacity. But Tim Walz came really out of the woodwork in terms of names that were bandied around, and he has just been a terrific choice.
He's been a great choice. And in fact, it's kind of funny because I was voting that day on the House floor very, very soon after it was clear that Kamala was going to be the Democratic nominee from the delegates. And a reporter stopped me and said, "Who are you supporting for vice president?" And I don't know what they expected, but I immediately turned to them and I said, "God, Tim Walz would make a great vice president, and he wins my swing seat." And really, at this moment in time, we ought to all be focused on one thing, and that's winning the battleground states. That's all that matters at this point. And so I saw Tim as someone who could win a swing seat in Minnesota's 2nd District, which is hard. Everybody here knows it's a really tough race for me. Every cycle, Tim wins my District 2. And I knew that would translate to the battleground states. And so not only did I say that to the press, but in the next week or so, I talked to every member of Congress I could talk to about Tim Walz's strength. And in fact, I think he was seen as the second tier of candidates to be the VP pick for a period of time. And he just kept working his way up that list because Tim is Tim all the time. And you can disagree with him on some issues, but you always know where his values and heart is.
Well, his personality comes through as well. And if you look at his record over the years, it's really so outstanding. It's so relatable to the average voter that it's got to make a difference.
Well, the average voter is not monolithic, right? And I've told this story to the press now that, I remember a morning where Tim and I went turkey hunting together since I've been a member of Congress. And then, we went to a gay rights gala after that evening or that weekend. And that's Tim. People aren't monolithic. They have, various interests and, they're usually not single issue voters. And, Tim is just a guy who can just be in any space and relate to people. And even in spaces where you may not agree with him on everything. I've been to Farm Fest where people were upset because, he tried to save lives during a pandemic and, booed him. And the truth, he says, well, I'm trying to keep you alive so you can vote against me. This is the guy who is willing to go in those spaces.
And he does. Now, there are things that are not on the ballot that are very, very important on the ballot. So let's start with abortion.
Yeah.
You're not going to see abortion on the ballot, but that certainly is an issue that we have to confront in this election.
Oh, it's on the ballot. It's on the ballot because over 20 states have now banned abortion, even in the case of rape and incest. And, I've got two very pro-life opponents, that have been running this whole time. And Joe Tayrab, remember the name, you're going to hear it most likely. This guy is an anti-abortion extremist. He was in an anti-abortion pro-life group in college. He said that this is the most important issue to him. He's on the board of a pregnancy crisis center. This guy's running for Congress because he wants to take away Minnesota freedoms. And what I love about this race that Tim Walz especially is bringing to it is, this concept of mind your own damn business, this concept of freedom. Yeah, you have the freedom to decide what books your own kid reads, but don't you dare tell me what books my kid can read, because that's infringing on my freedom. Same thing with abortion. It's, if you're opposed to abortion, don't have one. But don't tell your neighbor what they can and cannot do. So I just love the fact that we've reclaimed the word freedom. In every race that I've run, you always see in my commercials the American flag. And yes, I'm a lesbian mother of 4, but don't you dare tell me that this country isn't available to me and my family too, because I will fight till my dying breath to make sure that it is.
How is your grandchild?
Well, Alan, I am happy to report to you that my grandson is almost 3 years old.
That's hard to believe already.
But also that we have a nearly 1-year-old grandson now.
Oh, really?
He turns 1 later this month. And about 3 weeks ago, we had a third born.
Oh.
For those of you who know me, we've got 4, my wife and I have 4 sons. 2 of them have married in the last 4 years, which is just extraordinary. And we are now grandmothers of 3. So we are just incredibly happy, couldn't be prouder. And honestly, the only title I really need in life these days is Mimi. That's my grandma name.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's wonderful to hear that.
So much fun.
Now, among other things, and I don't know how you do it, you have had 68 to 70 town halls during this last session of Congress. Where do you get the time? How did you manage it? How did you get to every portion of this congressional district?
Well, we do it. It's about 2,000 square miles in this congressional district. And, it's about making sure that everyone throughout this district knows that we care about them. And, for me, my service in Congress, you think about the big bills that have passed, the infrastructure bill, the Chips and Manufacturing Act. But the things that have been most important to me have come from inside our community, and we've taken them to Washington. Things like, meeting people who are type 1 diabetics, and we cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. People like Angie Craig in this congressional district who, was suffering her family from not being able to afford insurance because of the family glitch in the ACA. We got that changed. People like Bridget Noring, who lost her son Devin of fentanyl poisoning, and we've worked and are working to make sure that social media companies who allow that poison to be marketed on their platforms are held accountable.
The Cooper Davis and Devin Noring Act.
That's right, Cooper Davis and Devin Noring Act. And the reason I mention that with kind of the time that I spend in this district is it's people like Bridget who make working with, quite frankly, a bunch of idiots sometimes in Washington. I get on the elevator every day with Jim Jordan because he's near my office in Rayburn House Office Building. And look, I got to work with some people that I don't agree with. I got to work with people who are there for social media clicks, not for their constituents. But what makes it worthwhile to me to keep going back is people like Bridget, people like Allie, real people that we're making a difference in their lives. That's what keeps me in Congress.
And their children would be alive today if not for fentanyl.
We're saving lives now. And I wish to God someone had saved Devin, because Tom and Bridget don't deserve the pain they're going through. But you know what? We've already saved lives, and we're going to save a whole lot more before I'm done.
Now, another thing that's not on the ballot, but that really is very important, is appointments to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has devastated us. It's really a president who is immune from prosecution, things that we must change with legislation. We need a Democratic Congress for that.
Well, you're talking about two different things, right? I mean, God help us if we have another opening on the Supreme Court during the next term, if we don't have the White House, because we're going to be down even more. And we've seen what an activist, extremist Supreme Court, who, by the way, lied to the American people during their nomination process, during those hearings.
Individually, each of them.
Each of them lied to the American people. And so we've got to make sure that Democrats are in the White House to make sure if there's an opening on the Supreme Court, and frankly, there are openings every day throughout this country on federal courts that we need to make sure that we have a Democrat in the White House over. And then there's legislation. I mean, this is the most corrupt Supreme Court I've ever seen in my lifetime.
It's unbelievable.
These people will just accept private plane rides or tickets, or, I mean, come on. We need legislation that will make sure that they are held to an ethical standard in our country, just like members of Congress are. I mean, we have ethical guidelines.
We have to do away with Thomas Tripps.
We have to. And so there's so much we need to do on the Supreme Court. But most importantly, and I've said this a million times, there's going to be this is such an important election. But I tell you what, 2016 was pretty damn important because of these Supreme Court appointments. And we have to do everything in our power to make sure that what happened in 2016 does not happen again in 2024.
Well, it showed us what danger
right.
really we face.
And what sitting on the sidelines or taking your vote and saying, oh, I'm just going to protest vote, both major parties. Come on. Protest voting has a place, but not in 2024, for God's sake.
We keep saying that this election is the most important in our lives. But the fact of the matter is, this election is the most important in our lives.
Well, so much is going to come from this. And look, I served with President Trump. I served with Joe Biden. I did my best to block the worst ideas when President Trump was in office. And that's why it is so critical that we make sure we take back the House of Representatives. Let me just say that nothing will make me more proud, than to make my friend Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House, because, we got to do everything we can to make sure we have the White House. But man, as a backstop, we sure have to have the House of Representatives. And having the House starts by winning these swing seats.
And
that
maintain
means
the Senate as well.
Holding the 2nd District, my seat here in Minnesota.
Oh, absolutely. And you're in what is called one of those purple districts, although you turned it blue, and we have to keep it blue.
It's light blue.
And certainly, but as I said, the Senate also is very important.
It's all important. It's all critical, this election.
There is so much that could be accomplished if we had the Senate and the House. We
have to get filibuster reform through, or it'll be just like my first term in Congress, where the House passed, second term in Congress, where the House passed these great bills, and they, where bills go to die is in the filibuster. The majority doesn't matter in the Senate. So we've got to have filibuster reform, especially around voting rights and civil rights in our country. I believe that strongly.
Now, another thing that we really want to talk about is the border. The border is going to be a big issue. But people who are listening to the noise seem to forget that there was a border bill that passed that Donald Trump said to the Republicans, don't pass this bill, and they shelved it.
Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't want the problem solved because he believes it helps him in an election. Look, I've been one of the Democrats who have been saying to the Biden administration these last 2 years, we have to make sure we have a secure border. You can say secure the border, and that we need to make sure that we have legal paths to immigrate into this country. And we need to be processing these asylum cases much, much faster down at the southern border. But the truth is, the Biden administration finally acted under executive order many of the things that this bipartisan border bill would have addressed. And the only reason the Congress has not passed a bipartisan border bill at this point, developed by a Republican, James Lankford, one of the most conservative members of the Senate, is because Donald Trump can tell the Republican Party what to do and what not to do, and they just cave, even when they know it's the right thing to do. And I have to tell you, we're going to secure the border. Democrats are finally going to get it done because we keep trying to work with these guys. And I think what the administration realized, and it's what I was hounding them about for months and months and months, in fact 2 years, it was you can't trust these guys to do it legislatively. Legislatively, you need to act. And that's exactly what they finally did. And we're seeing, a much more secure border.
And of course, ex-President Trump has really gone into hiding at Mar-a-Lago. But J.D. Vance, interestingly enough, I found out that this is his fourth name. It's interesting when the man has changed his name 3 times, but is suggesting that we throw 20 million people out of the country.
Well, look,
including dreamers.
These guys. That's just cruel. These dreamers have grown up with our kids. They go to school with our kids. They're part of America. And look, we can have a secure border, and we can have a path to citizenship for America's dreamers. At the same time, the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. And oh, by the way, I was just at Farm Fest recently, and one of the topics that farmers want to raise with me is how do we get more H-2A visas? How do we get more TN visas? Because they need more legal farm workers in this country in order to make sure we have food security in our nation. So look, the nonsense coming from the people like J.D. Vance, who, by the way, he and I grew up under very similar circumstances, J.D. Vance. And what happened in my household, my mom, she taught me to hope that if I worked hard, that if I worked a couple of jobs and went to college, that I could get out of the mobile home court, that I lived in until I was 18 years old. That was affordable housing to us. But what it seems to have done for J.D. Vance is it made him hate. It made him hate other people, and I don't understand this. And what I love,
us hate his background.
Hate. Let's give people hope, not hate. And that, in the end, is exactly what this election is about: hope, not hate.
And that's exactly what Tim Walz did with his daughter.
It's amazing.
Hope.
That's right.
Speaking of
that's
another
what he's
thing,
given to us. That's
another
right.
thing that's not on the ballot, that's on the ballot, IVF.
Yeah. It's just astounding to me that this Congress of Republicans over in the House, they won't protect IVF in our country. I mean, give me a break. These are people who are desperately trying to create families.
We'll talk about hypocrisy.
Yeah, the most
They talk
hypocrisy.
about wanting life and then stopping the possibility of life.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right. That's right. And again, it comes back to freedom. This, Mind your own damn business. I love that. That's my favorite thing that Tim Walz has said on the campaign trail so far, because that's exactly what the people in the 2nd District believe.
Well, I like weird,
Yeah.
but...
Yeah, okay. We'll weird's pretty good too.
Closer to home, we have the Protect Local Law Enforcement Act because of the tragedy in Burnsville.
That's right.
You've been really instrumental in that, so talk about that.
Well, first and foremost, let's not forget that these families are still there and they're still hurting in the 2nd District. 2 police officers and firefighter, paramedic, Adam Finseth, their families are still hurting, and so our hearts continue to go out to them. Look, there were an Apple Valley and a Rosemont police officers rushed in to protect, to try to save these officers that morning in Burnsville. That vehicle, which is a tactical vehicle that police use, it's called a Bearcat, sustained over 20 bullet punctures as it was trying to come in and save them that day. So, with today's weapons of war being on the streets, we have to make sure that law enforcement can get the tactical vehicles that they need for these kinds of rescues. And it's a shame that they need them in today's policing, but they do. So I've introduced a bill that would allow our nation's law enforcement to apply for grant money from the federal government and not restrict them from buying things like Bearcats. They needed them that day. We would have had more funerals if Dakota County, the city of Rosemount, had not invested in a Bearcat. And so I would just say to everybody, it's unfortunately part of policing is they need these kinds of vehicles to protect themselves when you've got an AR-15 on the other side with a criminal.
A sad commentary on our time, but
It
the
is.
fact of the matter is that there are more, more guns than people in this country.
That's right.
And
That's right.
we really have to enforce law enforcement.
We do. We have to make sure that they can stay as safe as possible while they keep us safe. And tragedies like Burnsville just reinforce that.
Now, one of the things that you have accomplished is crossing the aisle in a very partisan Congress. For instance, the Stock Trading Act.
Yeah.
You have Republicans who are with you on that. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, look, I don't think members of Congress should be able to trade individual stocks. I pick up I probably have 12 to 20 meetings a day. Some with businesses, some are small, some are, businesses that employ a lot of people in our community. And I don't think members of Congress should be able to have in their portfolio, whatever that investment portfolio is, stock. And when I say that, I do what I say. But, everybody knows I worked at St. Jude Medical for a number of years. That was the only stock I owned before I got sworn into Congress, and I sold every single penny of it before I came to Congress. I just don't believe that we should have those stock because, even if you choose, if you're not trading on insider information, people don't trust members of Congress anymore. And so let's make sure that we're upholding ourselves to the highest of standards. And Alan, I am so proud of my bipartisan record, even in these polarized times. I've been ranked by outside groups in the top 3% of all bipartisan members of Congress, and the truth is, I vote this district. There have votes, especially in this Congress, that I've taken that have been on the other side of this administration. In fact, I voted against this administration about 30% of the time on individual topics and issues. And I'm going to keep doing what I think is right for the 2nd District of Minnesota. We all know I get yelled at from the left, I get yelled at from the right, and the truth is that 80% of this district is somewhere down the middle.
If you're getting abuse from both sides, that means that you're doing a good job.
Well, I can take it.
Now, another thing, you opposed pay raises for Congress.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, look, the average...
Your own pay raise.
The average family of 4, as it turns out, most constituents don't make what members of Congress make, right? So, to come home and say, at a time when we're fighting corporate greed here in our community or jacking up prices and say, oh, I thought I'd give myself a pay raise. That's, I don't believe I can come home and defend that. And so, I just think when the average member makes more than the average family of 4 has to live on in this Congress or in this community, that is the last thing members of Congress should be focused on. So, yes, I opposed it. That doesn't win me any popularity awards with certain members of Congress. But again, I'm going to represent what I believe this district, is supporting and we'll just let everybody yell at me when they want.
Now, this is a district that has a lot of farm land in it. So let's talk about the Bipartisan Farm Act.
Yeah. So this district, that's where people get confused about this district. Certainly it's, Dakota County,
Yeah, they think
northern,
we're urban.
it's suburban in parts of it. But right now, as we speak, 40% of this congressional district is covered in corn and soybeans. And I love that fact, that there is corn and soybeans throughout this entire district right now. And yes, I mean, I'm going to work across the aisle probably more than most on ag issues. In fact, there are 12 of my marker bills in the House version of the Farm Bill. There are about 9 of them in the Senate version of the Farm Bill, and I'm working to get those two things put together. But the bipartisan, Workforce Modernization Act is a good example of a piece of legislation that I'm working on. Working with FinStat, we don't agree on every issue, and I'm sure your viewers wouldn't agree on every issue with both of us, but we're working together on a bunch of farm bills in particular because we both serve on the Ag Committee, and I'm going to keep working on behalf of family farmers. That's part of my job, is to show up even in places where I don't get to 50% of the vote, where I was down in a community not too long ago, and the local reporter asked me, why do you keep coming back here? Candidly, it was New Prague. Only about 35% of our voters vote for you. And I said, yeah, and when I'm sworn into office, I take an oath to represent everybody in my district to the best of my ability.
And so you have.
Thank you.
And so you have. We have several minutes left. Let's talk about 85 days to the election.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to feel like a long time every day, but on the other hand, it's going to go in the blink of an eye. And one of my favorite lines Tim Walz has used in his VP run here is, "We'll sleep when we're dead." Tim has said that a lot here in Minnesota over the years. 85 days. And when I say 85 days, look, I want your viewers to think about that. How can I personally get involved and make a difference in the next 85 days? There's 85 days left to phone bank. There's 85 days left to door knock. 85 days if you don't want to talk to people, to write postcards. 85 days to get out and support a local candidate that you want to support. 85 days to get involved if you don't want to do it on a partisan basis in the League of Women Voters. 85 days, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing in the life, of our lives. So 85 days to make a difference, 85 days to make sure that when we wake up in November after Election Day, that it's the country that we want to see moving forward. And when I think about, what is the country I want to see moving forward? Look, I want a country that's available to every single one of us. And that's why I ran for Congress in 2016, because this kid from the trailer park had been so fortunate in her life to work her way up to healthcare manufacturing companies, to be able to, marry my wife and raise our 4 sons. We had been so lucky over the years that my general feeling, Alan, was that this country was just not available to as many people as it had been to me, where a young girl could work 2 jobs and put herself through state college. And let's make sure that we wake up. And for me right now, grandkids are top of mind, that it's the kind of country that can be available to our grandkids, no matter who they are.
You think you've been so lucky, but the fact of the matter is we have been so lucky in the 2nd Congressional District to have you as our representative of Congress, Representative Angie Craig. Thank you so much. I know that time is precious and that you came in to share it with us.
Alan, it's an honor, and it's an honor to do it with you. Thank you.